Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale vehicle unboxing and review video. Now today we're going to be taking a look at none other than the Batpod from The Dark Knight Rises. Now I personally never owned the original, so I have literally no idea what to expect from this, but I'm still pretty darn excited to get it out here. Now I got mine from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is of course down in the description below. They have 12-month installment plans and an awesome reward system. What we are going to do now though is get the box laying flat in the light box and do the unboxing. Here of course we have the box art, and what a piece of artwork it is. I love the way this looks. It's a grayscale image, of course, of the Batpod front and center on the street with the steps leading up to the courthouse where Bane and Batman had their final battle. You of course have The Dark Knight Rises up the top, and then on the very top of the box that image extends all the way up. We also have a carrying handle. I've always said that when a carrying handle is involved, you know you've got a serious collectible on your hands. Now you do have all of the relevant legal information on the back. Now this thing is quite cumbersome to unbox on camera, so I do apologize if I struggle just a little bit. But as you can see, it's housed in a very familiar grey foam block. I say that because usually our die-cast Iron Man figures come in packaging very similar to this, but seeing as we do know how sturdy this packaging is, we should be pretty confident that no matter where this thing is shipped from, it's going to be darn secure. What we are going to do now though is get the Batpod itself laid out in the light box and take a closer look. Here we have the Batpod fully assembled, and it was pretty straightforward to do, helped in part by this awesome instruction manual. Technically it's just one single sheet, but it's a very thick and super high quality cardstock. Honestly, I am tempted to frame this. I really love this image. But of course, on the other side, it explains how to put everything together, how to access the battery compartment for the LEDs, and also how to peg on the EMP rifle. And don't worry, I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Now, we won't spend a ton of time in this view because I want to show you a few cinematic shots and pans of the Batpod itself. But just to give you an idea of all the various functions, let's dive in. Now you do have these sort of guard pieces that you have to peg into place. They simply push onto these steel rods. They are metal and very sturdy. Then you install these very thin plastic rods on the side. They don't feel as sturdy, so do be careful. You can see there's one on either side here. So when you're doing it, just take your time. Now to access the battery compartment, you literally remove this top panel, and then it has some internal engine details. That is actually the battery compartment itself. You can see the screw right there. Now to reinstall it, I would suggest putting that piece in, then sliding it down into place, and then it sits where it's supposed to. Now the cool thing about this is you do have a couple of metal rods that support the high traffic areas. What do I mean by that? Well, let's be honest, a lot of weight is put on the middle structure because it kind of hovers in the air on these two wheels. So you do have some metal in there just to keep it nice and rigid. You also have these red pins. Yes, they are rather unsightly, but when you remove them, it basically frees up the wheels so they can now spin. I personally will be leaving the pins in. That means the wheels are locked into place and this thing isn't going to go rolling off my display case. Now on the underside you can see the on and off button. If we flick it, we do have some LEDs on the front. They aren't the brightest in the world and they aren't really the biggest draw of the set for me. I'm more getting this to pose alongside Batman and Catwoman. Now the last thing I want to show you in this view is this clip right here. Bringing in the EMP rifle that comes with the Armory Batman and DX12, it does have to snap into place in a very specific spot, and it's underneath this piece right here. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but once you clip it in, yeah, it's relatively sturdy. I can totally see myself leaving it there long term when I'm posing this thing up with Batman. Without further ado though, let's get Batman himself out here and pop him on the Batpod. And here we have Batman himself on the Batpod. Now you'll have to trust me on this, but it was no easy feat to accomplish. This was definitely not upsized, by the way, so if you're wondering how hard or easy it's going to be to pose your DX19 lying down actually riding the Batpod, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, because even with the DX12 that I own, it was still rather difficult to get him laying flat and the knees in the holsters and the feet in the right position. In fact, it's still not 100% perfect, but I've given up trying. I'm never going to pose him like this anyway. It puts a lot of stress on the joints, on the suit, and also on the handles of the Batpod itself. So I personally will be displaying this with Batman standing up, straddling it, holding the EMP gun. I think that's absolutely the best way to do it. It puts little to no stress on Batman himself, nor does it on the Batpod. Because there is no weight being pressed down on the middle section, even though it does feel suitably sturdy, I don't know, I just feel slightly uncomfortable doing it because it is suspended in midair with just a bunch of plastic and thin metal rods holding it up. Chances are it's going to be totally fine and I've got nothing to worry about, but something in the back of my mind says, yeah, just be safe and then you'll be perfectly fine. So that's what I'm going to do. But do let me know if you are braver than I am down in the comments below. Now, the other reason people are potentially picking up this Batpod is because Hot Toys just announced that they are doing a 2.0 version of Catwoman. And of course, you can pose Anne Hathaway's Catwoman / Selina Kyle on this Batpod. Now, I wasn't that excited to give this a go because my Catwoman is the 1.0, therefore the suit is slightly more fragile, so I've gone with the safer of the two pose options. You can totally have her lying down, or even if you are super adventurous, try and pull off the pose that the Queen Studio statue has. But for me, she fits, she's in proportion, so I'm just going to go with her standing or straddling it just like I would with Batman. I haven't decided if I'm going to give it to him or if I'm going to give it to her. Do let me know which of the two options you prefer and which one you would go with in your display. But nevertheless, yeah, this pairs up quite nicely with either the Cape Crusader or Selina Kyle. One very unnecessary but totally awesome little gimmick that Hot Toys decided to include is that you can actually move the brake levers backwards and forwards. As I said, completely unnecessary, but I'm super glad they decided to throw it in. Now don't worry, I haven't forgotten to speak about the detail and the paint applications of the Batpod itself before we wrap up. I have to say, this thing actually looks pretty darn fantastic. I'm saying that because initially I thought the design was kind of weird, kind of boring, but now that I have this thing in hand, I am suitably impressed. Is it my favorite Hot Toys vehicle of all time? No, it isn't. I still think that either goes to the '89 Batmobile or the DeLorean, but this thing is still well worth picking up. It's a nice 1/6 scale vehicle to add to your display that's not going to take up as much room as some of those other ones. However, the paint applications, as little as there are well done. We do have some gunmetal shading here and there over the silver sections, just to make it look a little bit more metallic. We also have some smoky effect to the barrels of the guns. Don't really know how else to describe it other than that. And then on the tires, we have some dirt and grime. By the way, yes, the tires are rubbery. I don't know if the original one had any issues with cracking or deformation. I know the tumblers definitely did, but luckily mine didn't have any of those issues. So fingers crossed with the Batpod, you're going to be just fine. But aside from a couple of metal struts here and there, the majority of this thing is just black, unpainted matte plastic. Does that bother me? No, because it is accurate to the movie. Is it slightly boring? Yeah, I think it is. The Batpod has never been my favourite vehicle out of the Nolanverse. That definitely goes to the Tumbler, with the Bat coming in a very close second. But this thing takes the number 3 spot. It's not horrible, but it's not my favourite vehicle of the trilogy. Either way, I am glad to have it in the collection. It's a very imposing, impressive piece. It has a presence, especially if you are pairing it up alongside Batman or Catwoman, which elevates it even further. The LED lights aren't the most exciting thing out there, but I am glad they included them. And I do like the fact that it can roll, and that you have a locking mechanism. So if you don't want it to roll, you can lock it down, put it in your display, and when you walk back in the room, it won't have rolled off. Now, if you are looking to get this, I got mine from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is, of course, down in the description below. They have 12-month installment plans and an awesome reward system. While you're down there, check out the link to 6 Scale Network, the Facebook group. Come along, chat figures, share photos of your collection, and of course, see what's coming up next on the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.